group of sixth years, one of whom I'm slightly worried about. We won't name him publicly on the internet. But we're talking about English and preparation. And one of them, who we will name, Leo, hard-working fella, bit worried about the whole structure of an English essay. How much are you supposed to write? The most common question on each poem or to develop a point. First of all, there's no clear answer to that question. The fact is your work has to be purposeful, coherent, written in language which is accessible and easy to read, and mechanically accurate. Here's a question on Yeats. The key words: evocative language to explore personal experience and make observations which are universally significant. So if you're doing an Irish Airman foresees his death, Leo, have you done an Irish Airman foresees his death?
Yeah.
You might know the lines, "A lonely impulse of the light drove to this tumult in the sky." You know those lines? Yeah. Okay. And then the famous ending of that poem, which I'd highly recommend you learn, because every poem that you do, you should learn 2 to 3 quotes. "I balanced all, brought all to mind. The years to come seemed waste of breath, a waste of breath the years behind. In balance with this life, this death." I know it's 4 lines, very easy to read because it's so beautifully structured. The rhyming, the meter, the repetition. You know that, yeah? Do we know that quote? Mm-hmm. Okay. So what my idea would be is that if you knew those, you'd have loads to say in response to this question. And you're asking how long, should you write on a poem? You have to show the ability to reach into a poem, take out relevant references, and explain them in the light of the question. And one way to do that is through an A-B paragraph structure. And so I have a document up on the screen here. And later on, when you go home and this video is posted, you can watch this video. And what it is just me talking about our way, because English teachers will always tell you they know the way. There is no the way. There's multiple different ways to write interesting essays. But the simple fact is you have to demonstrate knowledge and you have to engage with the question in a thoughtful way. That's the basic, base of the pizza with the tomato sauce and the cheese. Now, everything else you put on top of that, that's up to you. You can make it really fancy or really simple. All right, make sense? So I've got a paragraph here. Are you ready? An Irish Airman. So again, listen to your keywords. Ready for your keywords? Evocative language, personal experience, universally significant. An Irish Airman foresees his death is a poem that typifies Yeats' style. Like the other poems I've mentioned, that's a continuity link in your essay to earlier on in your essay, the other poems you've mentioned. It was inspired by a real life event. Why am I talking about a real life event? Because the question asked about personal experience. When Major Robert Gregory, the son of Yeats' friend, was shot down and killed over Italy in 1918. Does that demonstrate knowledge? Yeah. Again, as in the case with The Stairs Nest by My Window and Sailing to Byzantium, 2 other poems you may have mentioned earlier on in the essay, because coherence of delivery involves linking the different sections of your essay together, like the carriages on a train. The language is cinematic. Does cinematic, is that synonymous with evocative? Does it mean when you read it, you can see it? In the line, "A lonely impulse of the light drove to this tumult in the sky," the imagery is stark. Why am I saying that? Because the question asked about evocative language. And immediate, as the reader's visual sense is stimulated and the chaos of aerial combat is brought to life. The fact that the poem is a first-person narrative also adds to a very thoughtful atmospheric tone. So what I've got there is 123 words in a paragraph that deals really with the language and the real life experience part of the question. Now, if I can then add in another sub-paragraph on the harder part of the question, which is about universally significant, then I'm doing really well. By the way, when you read that, when you hear that, does it sound as if this kid knows the poem? So you don't have to go through the poem line by line, section by section. That's narrating the poem. That's paraphrasing the poem. That's exactly the wrong way to do it. You reach in, you demonstrate knowledge, and then comment. The really remarkable thing about this poem is Yeats' ability to take a single real-life event and use it to explore complex themes. There's your topic sentence for your sub-paragraph. This is apparent in the last, this is apparent, this is evident, this is clear. Have your phraseology used where you can link into your poems. When Gregory describes life as a waste of breath, and concludes, in balance with this life, this death. So I've broken that quote up and I'm using it as I wish. And you are absolutely allowed to integrate short pieces of quotation into your sentence structure. This challenges the reader to think about important themes like mortality, identity, and purpose. A reader is forced to look at these issues from an unusual perspective, the perspective of a young person whose sense of ennui, which means kind of what you feel right now. I'm so bored, I want to die. Which is why sometimes young people go out and do crazy things on the weekend. Not looking at anybody in particular. You're looking at the cameras turned this way. Brings him to a point where his life is of no real value. As is the case with the other poems I've discussed, this is proof of Yeats' ability to draw universal lessons from life experiences. Now, Leo, that took me 6.5 minutes to write, whereas you'd have about 10 minutes per poem. Between maybe 8 and 9 minutes per poem, right? You're looking for structure. I wouldn't be spending any more than 8 or 9 minutes on a poem. You're writing about 5 poems. There's your essay, 50 minutes, because you're going to take 10 minutes of your prep. I've written 250 words across the 2 poems. Sorry, across the 2 parts of that one piece of analysis. Right? And I've only used 2 quotes. So multiply that by 4, you got 1,000 words. That's 4 poems. So with one poem you might write, we're going to talk about Swift's epitaph now. You might only write 1 little paragraph on that. Another poem where you've got more to say, you might write 2 paragraphs. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, in terms of evocative language, personal experience, universally significant, when you look at Swift's epitaph, which some of the guys were saying here that they do, and I don't teach it, it's a very simple, 6-line tribute to the writer Jonathan Swift, who was to Yeats important because Jonathan Swift was an Irishman who was a giant in the same field that Yeats wanted to be a giant in. He was a writer. He wrote Gulliver's Travels and many other things. And he was a man from Dublin, and Yeats loved Dublin. So this is a very, very simple poem. Nothing difficult about it. Swift had sailed into his rest. Savage indignation there cannot lacerate his breast. Imitate him if you dare, world-besotted traveller. He served human liberty. Now, it's a tribute to a man he admired. He served human liberty on its own. The language is simple and direct. But there is elements of evocative language in that. Evocative sailed into his rest. Savage indignation. Lacerate his breast. That language is very, very... To lacerate means to slice through. Yeats is angry with people who are criticising Swift in retrospect, after Swift is gone. He feels that anybody criticising Swift is doing it in almost a cowardly way, to lacerate the breast. People are savagely indignant about Swift. Whatever he did, they don't like him. But Yeats is saying very simply that this guy was extraordinary and deserves to be remembered. That's what an epitaph is. Remembered because he served human liberty. Now, so there you have evocative language with the images of sailing and a breast being lacerated and the violence of the language. Personal experience. He's a Dublin man. Yeats was a Sligo man. He's an Irish man writing about an Irish writer. He's a man whose life revolves around writing, admiring another writer. But what you're really looking for there is where the universal significance is. Because what Yeats is saying is, it's easy, well, I'll give you a good example. It's easy to hurl from the ditch. It's easy to criticise somebody who's not on the pitch when you're not able to go on the pitch. We live in a world today where there's lots of revisionism in history, where we judge people from the past by our standards of today, where we have social media, where we're ready to criticise other people who can't defend themselves. So Yeats is talking about what is valuable in us. And for him, if we have principles, Swift stood up and served human liberty. That makes Swift a man to admire. And when you read the poem, it forces us as readers to think about those themes of, what is valuable in life, of freedom, of principles, and of our human capacity to be cruel and judgmental. I could certainly squeeze a 150-word paragraph out of that poem in relation to that question. But it all depends on the question that you're answering. Will that do? Okay.